Belsky, CEO and founder of FlowerHire. I'm sitting here with Alex Shah, founder of Solo Sciences and now CTO of Akerna Technologies. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Dave.
Alex and I feel like we're friends. We've known each other for a couple of years. I appreciate you coming by. I guess first things first, what is the Solo platform and what does it do for cannabis?
Solo was created really with two purposes. First was to create a sense of transparency and trust between the consumer and the brand. Brands today have been struggling, especially with the vaporizers that have been sort of knocked off or counterfeited. You've got that crisis starting. We coined the phrase Vapegate. One of the problems has been that the brands that are fake or illegal represent 80% of the market today. In fact, it's a number most people don't realize. 165 billion of these things are out there. So when people say THC vapes are killing people, I always tell people, yeah, just because it says that doesn't make it real. Solo tries to fix that problem by serializing and putting a fingerprint on every single package out there, so we can tell you what's real and what's fake and what you can consume with the confidence of that brand.
Well, I think Solo, obviously recently in the news, is a successful roll-up into what I think is the only publicly traded cannabis tech company, Akerna. So fantastic. Congratulations.
Thank you.
How does the Solo platform tie into the rest of kind of the ecosystem that Akerna is trying to put out there?
I think one of the fundamental things that Solo was trying to do is say, how do we look at this ERP space and the fact that every single cannabis producer, retailer, supplier has to tie into it, but how do you actually do something where from an investor standpoint and from a business standpoint, we could really start to hang our hat on the growth of the whole industry, not be limited by the number of individuals. And one of the things that Solo does is, because every Solo code is on every package, more packages, more products that are out there, the more we actually start to grow our own business. So we get direct correlation to alpha, is what we talk about, in the space. It's the only way to really participate on NASDAQ directly to cannabis without ever touching the plant. And as more is sold, more happens. I mean, beyond that, what's interesting with the Akerna acquisition, we're actually hitting other markets. And it's not just cannabis, but obviously hemp, CBD, beer, wine, anything you put in your body or on your body.
In layman's terms, explain to me, how Solo works and what it is. It's basically like an advanced QR code that prevents anyone's ability to crack it or counterfeit it.
Yeah, I mean, essentially what Solo is a complete replacement to a 25-year-old, 26-year-old technology called QR. QR was never designed for any kind of safety, because think about it, we can't tell what the QR code is pointing to. I could put a little QR code on something and tell you, scan this, and it could send you directly to a site that's phishing, to a site that's going to steal all your information. And in fact, holograms are just as bad. Just because there's a hologram on something doesn't mean you sit there with a little loop, right. And you're not a forensic graphologist. You're not going to sit there and go, hey, this doesn't look real.
It looks fancy.
Absolutely, it looks fantastically fancy. But here's the problem. When you do that, it's a false sense of security. So what we have to do is we have to do something different.
You have one here.
Yeah, I do. I actually have one. Have one at all times. In fact, I think I've got Katie's. But what we did is we actually took our logo and we copyrighted it, trademarked it, and I don't know if you could sort of see it, but inside there are little tiny dots. In fact, in the real version, it's only the size of a dime. They're 0.2 millimeters, 2 human hairs thick, little tiny aberrations. And those aberrations actually allow us to use the phone, the camera phone, to find, using machine vision, defects in the image. So every single box gets fingerprinted. So not every batch, not every SKU, not every product, every box. You have 10 cans of Coke, all 10 cans are different. If you have 10 vape cartridges from the same exact batch, they're all different. And you could do some amazing things. You can give loyalty and rewards. You could scan one and suddenly win a prize. You could have, like the Willy Wonka golden ticket, scan one. You could even show up at an event, and if you're carrying your package and you go, hey, I'm here, it knows that you're there, and it figures out. In fact, our technology is a little different. We decided that people are going to copy it. In fact, we thought people are going to hack it. We're all ex-CIA and NSA and DOD. We've got some pretty clever backgrounds. One of the things that makes it interesting is we looked at it and said, don't do something you can't copy, make it a honey trap. Copy it, go ahead. As soon as you copy our tech, we'll find you. And that's what makes it powerful, because you can't be in two places at once. And that's the whole trick behind it. It's not expensive like holograms, it's not complicated. In its simplicity, I think is our strength.
And so there's definitely some unique and proprietary IP behind the whole thing, which at the end of the day, in the cannabis ecosystem over the course of time, what's going to hold value is unique and proprietary IP.
Absolutely.
And we started thinking about this IP which you had and applying it to this industry. I'm sure you had to kind of pivot how you thought it would apply the most. What was your first thought process in terms of launching this particular platform for cannabis, and how did you pivot once you realized the marketplace?
I came into this really naively. I mean, first of all, I was calling it marijuana as opposed to cannabis. So let's just start with how far off I was on the reservation. But I had a background in consumer packaged goods because I helped the authorship and the creation of the category management standard. In fact, in '93, we wrote the paper that defines how consumer packaged goods are actually out there. What we did is we realized that these things are, and that's an industry that's mature, they've been working on this for almost 30 years, they know how to use data, how to use information to do things. I naively assumed cannabis was the same. It wasn't. The maturity, sophistication, people hadn't been placed. I think you were still very nascent when we first got together, and professionals from outside were very wary of coming into cannabis. You didn't have people who were ex-P&G specialists rolling in.
Incredibly challenging to get those people into this business.
Absolutely, and if you think of it, those are the people that were changing the industry. So 2 years ago, we were like, oh yeah, just don't worry about counterfeiting, just put this on your package, we'll help you do marketing, we'll do all these clever things, we'll figure out how people feel. We invented and used some of the psychographic stuff that we built from our other companies, and we took those ideas and we put them into this and said, we could, and we realized, whoa, we were 25 years too far in the future for an industry where regs were changing every 90 days, where staff was changing, brands were disappearing, people were disappearing. I mean, you still had folks being thrown in backs of trucks with bad things happening, right? I mean, it wasn't the best of the world. And what we realized in the last 3 years is we had to focus on the biggest problem. Most of the brands today and all the investors were this big. The black market is that big. Even if none of us fight with each other, we have 90% of the market we could grow. We could literally 10x and everyone could be happy. And the funny thing is, most people didn't realize that. And what we realized is we need to help our friends. We need to help the small industry. We can do it. We have the tech. So we pivoted into the anti-counterfeiting world. And then as we mature, we'll give them more weaponry. Cannabis is something everyone's going to use. Between CBD, hemp, cannabis, safely 30% of the American population is touching it in some fashion. And we know the number's going up. And we know that's the secret number is probably higher. Let's give them something in an industry where we can be proud of what we're doing and say, look, we're showing transparency, we're building trust, and we're doing it in a way that's actually, traceable, authentic. And yeah, then the good stuff comes in. So yeah, we pivoted because one thing that you always learn is if you find yourself in the wrong place, you better reassess rapidly. Otherwise, you just disappear. Right.
Well, I mean, I've seen a lot of the journey of Solo from the very beginning. I was fortunate enough to sit in and fly on the wall at an early investor pitch, and it's just impressive to see where it's come to. Obviously, now you're the only CTO of a publicly traded cannabis technology company. Like, it's safe to say there's not another one.
No.
And where do you go from here? I mean, as a CTO of Akerna, what's next for Alex Shah?
I think, for me personally, the relationship with Akerna is actually very special. Jessica Billingsley, the CEO, and I met 1 year to the date. It's coincidental. Katie set up a meeting as a complete flyer. She's head of partnerships. She was like, listen, I think these folks are in the right place.
Katie Flannery, your co-founder, head of revenue.
Absolutely. Yeah. And she's, and we set this meeting up. Well, she set the meeting up, and I sat there, and 2 minutes into it, I went, wow, this meeting is 6 months too early. And what I realized is they have a history in the space. They're 10 years in the world, and with it comes all of the kudos and warts. Okay, I mean, it is what it is. But guess what? They also represent a major part of the industry because they're inside states, they're inside different places. And we realized that by putting this technology that we have from Solo and coupling it with the sort of reach that they had, that dream of fixing the industry or making it safer, we could do that in no time. And I think the two of us realized that, okay, we could do that and we could sort of scale up the business very quickly. But I think now I've got a pretty big task. I mean, I still hold the president title, CEO title of Solo, and I hold the CTO function at Akerna. And the roles are very complementary. The CTO thing lets me look across. We are buying companies in the space across the entire ERP sort of food chain. We know that the best of the best across these are things we want on the same side. There is a lot of consolidation that's going to take place. There are a lot of great companies. We'd love to hear from all of them. So, obviously, if anyone's interested. And what we want is to build something we could all be proud of. And I think there's so much room left in where we trade. I think there's a lot of room left in the business. And if you look at just even the analysts recently, I think just published something that has us targeted almost 2.5 times where we're trading right now. So, in general, it's a pretty exciting place. We've got NASDAQ currency and all of the velocity and growth of like a startup.
It's phenomenal. I can't wait to see where it goes. I definitely appreciate you coming by, joining us today.
Listen, pleasure. Thank you. Always a pleasure.
No problem.
Thank you guys.
Thank you, Pasquale, for filming.